All right. This is my diorama, my Unreal Engine 4 project. You know, the one with all the borrowed assets. That's me. All right. So, full disclosure, I apparently missed the part where you mentioned having to create our own assets. Um, yeah, didn't know that was a thing. To be fair, kind of an unwritten rule, because I was following along with the requirements here, and what I saw was to create and import an asset into the scene and repeat it a couple times in the scene, and that made sense. I assumed you wanted us to display or show that we could, in fact, import our own asset and use it a couple times, etc., etc. Uh, didn't realize, there was more to that. I assumed the part of the challenge was to, find assets to put into our scene, from various sources and be able to, incorporate them in a way that they meshed well. Make a convincing environment, given whatever you could get, because we had specific scenes and whatnot. And I thought that was part of the thing, was to like kind of put together something convincing using whatever. I didn't realize I was supposed to make them. Nonetheless, you know how that worked out. So, nonetheless, I'm still happy with what I did. I like it. It was took a lot of time. I spent the upside to the way I did it was I spent a lot of time inside the engine, and I think I'm better off for it. I learned a lot, and much of the time I spent inside the engine, there's nothing to even show for it. There was a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of trial and error, getting things to work, because I did add, so much functionality. I guess that a lot of that was testing and playing with the blueprints and a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the final cut, so to say. But also my environment, obviously, what did I just do? There we are. The little guy. Anyways, uh, what was I gonna say? The scale of my environment, clearly. I mean, you wanted two walls, but I was like, train station. That's not possible. Anyways, uh, I have 428 actors inside the scene, which is, I'd say that's pretty. That's a lot. I spent and a lot of these things like these walls, I couldn't just what is the size? Does it say? I'm sure there's a way. It's been a little while. I'd have to really look. And anyways, moving on. Uh, a lot of these things duplicating, obviously, you duplicate and then move it down. But the snapping, it wasn't as simple as snapping to 50 units and just moving it left and repeat the process. A lot of this stuff I had to turn snapping off and individually go in and just look at. Obviously, now it's a mess, but had to line them up, by pixel or whatever. So it was a lot of painstaking, whatever I'm getting at, that stuff, lining things up and what have you. There's more to that. I already forgot. Where was I going with this? I have headphones in, so it's like I can't even hear myself, making it hard to think. Take those out for now. Oh, okay. So functionality, right? Obviously made player controls, and my players. I forgot all the buttons. My player just so happens to have footsteps because I added it. Yep. So you had to make a custom event for the walking play and stop. This took time just to Google and find out how to do this. A lot of them had. It was a lengthy process where you actually could make different sounds for different parts of the map, for different, be it ground or concrete and grass, stuff like that. So just finding this, I realized that was like a process that I couldn't even comprehend at the time. So I just wanted to narrow it down and just make it one sound for his entire walk sequence. Nonetheless, okay, getting back to my point. So here it is. Sound, footstep. I just went and found a footstep, like, I can't even remember the video. It's just a step. And then I just took that snippet, took it into the Adobe Premiere, took the sound out, made it its own little file, and threw it in here. And then the rest is self-explanatory. Flashlight. So initially I had a lot of point lights in my scene, and that was a pain in itself because you can only have, I believe it's 5 within proximity of each other before one or more will stop working. So that took a lot of adjusting their radiuses and intensities and trying to get them all to make the world lit up enough so that you could see, but without those crossing or interacting, la 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 la. And that wasn't really a possibility given the scene I was trying to make, so I had to add an ambient light box, and then when I finally discovered how to do the flashlight and that like came to mind, I was like, oh, that'd be a good thing to add. I got rid of all that and then basically redid the lighting, simplified it to a couple here and there. But I wanted the flashlight to be a focus, so the environment was going to be pretty dark for the most part. Jump, mouse input, so the rest of the controls. Obviously, these are the trigger boxes. The cutscene that I added is just the camera animation, just kind of puts a little focus, just like a little. If you were to find a clue in a level or something, or a door would open, the slight camera animation that rotates and it's like, oh look, ta-da. Anyways, I was showcasing the texture I made, the shield texture here, which I had to make a opacity map and whatever this is, like the normal map for it, which I took the OC emblem into Photoshop, added like a grunge texture mask to it. Also had to make this the opacity map, so basically take the shield and make it white on top of actually initially had it transparent. That doesn't work. I had to put a black background behind it, I guess, for the alpha channel, however that stuff works. Yeah, took a little bit, but figured it out. And then that is showcased in my environment with the cutscene. Animation light is the little animation, the little gruntling that I borrowed. The skeletal mesh component. He plays when you trigger it, and as Blake mentioned, like, I don't have that in there now, but Blake had mentioned maybe destroying the trigger box after it plays, which because I couldn't figure out how to get the animation not to play again upon entering. But I believe, if I can remember correctly, Blake saying something like when you exit the trigger box, it destroys itself, therefore you can't do it all over and stuff. That's something I would have liked to look into and add, because that was bothering me, but the more you know. And I added the sound, and let me see if I can find that and play that. And I don't have my headphones in. All right, I'll put one in. Okay, so I'm going to play that one more time. And that I actually took from the Gremlin movie, one of the little Gremlin sounds. Just like the footsteps, I took it into a Premiere and took that snippet, turned it into an audio file, and I actually added a reverb to it to give it that kind of echoey effect to make it sound like, to show that that sound was coming from down the hallway, which I thought it kind of like sounded really good for. That's what it sounds like. So that was a cool little thing that I did that I thought was cool. All borrowed, but I'm just modifying, making things fit, stuff like that. Not taking credit for like, I could have, but I while on the trend of borrowing, why not borrow? That's not what I was on. Okay, so the trigger box, the door, on actor end, on actor begin, target, the matinee, and I added the sound, which I think this took a little bit to figure out, but looking at it now, I can't even remember what it took. Nonetheless, I added the sound, and I had to adjust the door sound. I adjusted the door sound a couple of times, but then I went back and adjusted the length of the matinee so that the sound and the door would. Let's just go look at it really quickly. Oh, well, there's the cutscene. I'll show this again later. I didn't even need to do any of this. So I wanted the sound and the door to sync up, good. Except in that case, obviously, it plays the whole sound. But for the most part, it syncs up. So yeah, I had to adjust the timing and stuff to get that to work out the way I wanted. So little things like that I wanted. So you can see, I'll show you while I'm here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 point light, 6 in there, and 7. I put one here, right? Yeah, he's in there somewhere. So, and those barely light up the scene, and their radiuses are small so that they can all coexist within that space. But if I were to light up the scene using those, it doesn't work out that way. So that was all part of what I was talking about. Let me just play this while I can remember not remember what I was doing. Okay. So some UI elements, toggle F for flashlight, help if I click on the game. That goes away when you click on it. I just kind of started the player here down the hall. The ambient sound, the music, obviously I didn't make that myself. It was something I just found that I wanted to add to the mood. Not that these are things I couldn't make myself, but time-wise it would be a process. I didn't have that kind of time. So, moving on. What am I showing? Okay, so there's the sparks or the jeez, I completely lost my train of thought here. What am I looking for? Particle. Jeez, I cannot think of the word. So, particle system. That's there. There's also water later in the level that I don't know if that's necessarily particle. Anyways, little animation guy with the sound. A lot of these, like that's a mesh in itself. So a lot of little things just to add realism to the environment and stuff. I wanted to sound like the surface was up there. I added the blue spotlight there to, kind of a cooling, make it seem like it was nighttime, it was raining, moonlight maybe. Okay, so trigger the cutscene, which shows a cool little texture, I guess. I can't think of the word for what those are when you put it on the wall like that, graphic or something. So these were the elements that I made, the railroad and a little railroad to stand or whatever. So threw a lot of dirt over it to make it seem like, this was obviously not a functioning subway system. There's invisible walls that I had to put here so that you couldn't walk through the rock meshes because those didn't have collisions or something. Oh, and this floor was also the same problem. So, and I initially didn't know that was the reason my character kept falling through the floor. So that I finally figured it out and threw it invisible. Actually, it may not even be invisible, but there is a floor directly underneath this floor so that I don't fall through it. And a lot of the time was just spent making things, adding these little poles connected to the lights and stuff. Lining those all up. All the walls. I changed the textures on those. Speaking of which, like the textures, they didn't all fit the look of what I was doing, so I figured out how to go in and add a vector parameter as well as a blend overlay, and this allows me to change the color of, you know, said object pretty easily, just the overall color of it, which was helpful. But that took some time to figure out. But now it's a process that I know how to do, and that's pretty cool. So I can essentially take whatever and change the color of it or the hue or whatever it is. Because going through any one of these areas here was not an option. Obviously, that's the normal map and stuff. And messing with this does not give you the desired effect because that messes with the whatever that is. So unless I was going for like that, obviously. All texture related. Anyways, did I go over these? I think so. As far as requirements, let's see. Showed the use of the texture, lots of sounds, lots of lights, created the player controller, made and imported the railroad into the thing, had the particle system. Oh, did I even show you inside the door? Cutscene! That's there as well, camera animation. That's one of the 3 trigger boxes I think I have in the environment. There's the water. Kind of hard to see. Let this guy's eyes adjust, I guess. That's there. This was the room with the door. The animation that's triggered. That was most of it, I believe. Yep. Yeah, so that was all the requirements, I guess, so to say. But more than anything, I just wanted it to be a convincing level. That's kind of the approach I took, was level design, making something that was worth exploring or playing, or, you know. Obviously, there's no objective to this. It's walk around, but I wanted you to be the feel, you know, have that fear that, you know, there could be something that's going to pop out and kill you or something. Just spook. Just add and I can get around the camera animation if clearly I don't enter the trigger box. Yeah, I just wanted to make it seem I don't know, not necessarily realistic, but hopefully you can understand what I'm saying, because I clearly cannot think so much of my brain. Nonetheless, I swear I had more things to say, I forgot. Hopefully that clarified some of the stuff. I'm sure there was more to go over and I completely spaced out. But I'm happy with it. I like it. I enjoyed the process. I think it's something I want to pursue. What I enjoyed most was adding the functionality to the game, thinking of, you know, what's needed to make this, you know, more or less smooth, so that nothing seems out of place or that it's lacking things, like adding footsteps, something as small as that, to give it so that you're not questioning anything. Just kind of making it, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but I hope you know what I'm saying. Yep, okay. If I think of anything else, I'll add it in the blog, because my brain's not working. I think I need some coffee. Or maybe I had too much coffee. Anyways, thanks. See you next time.